Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Middle of the week here, and we are just over. By the time some of you are listening to this, we'll actually be exactly 1 week away from the NBA trade deadline. But as we record, just over a week away from the trade deadline, we've got some more trade rumors to get into today, some news, some injury updates, some good, some bad, a lot of stuff to talk about. By the way, I am Trevor Lane. You can find me over on X at Trevor_Lane. Keith Smith joining me at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, where do you want to start? We've got a lot of topics today to get into.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot. Let's start with the big one. Let's start with Joel Embiid, I guess.
Let's do it.
The big one got injured
Scary.
last night, so a lot of controversy around Joel Embiid. He was missed the game against the Nuggets. Was a very late scratch. He warmed up. Team didn't feel good about him playing. Didn't let him play. A lot of people had a lot to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he played against the Warriors and he got hurt. Jonathan Kuminga fell into his leg. It doesn't sound like it's going to be like one of those, oh no, that's the season kind of things.
Yeah.
But he did have to leave the game. And now we're kind of back to, or where are we at? In the meantime, they have slipped, I believe, if I have this correct, I want to say they're fifth now in the East. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Yep.
Yes, they are. They are indeed fifth. They're tied in terms of games back with the Cavs. They're 7 games back, but they are 29-17. The Cavs are 28-16. So that gives them a slightly higher winning percentage. So
and the Knicks passed them last night because the Knicks won again.
8 games in a row for New York.
So, yeah, 8 games in a row. Both the Knicks and Cavs 9-1 in their last 10 games. So.
Ooh.
Really moving up there, and for the Knicks, pretty impressive because they did without Julius Randle and OG Anunoby. So that's really good basketball being played in New York right now.
Yeah, both teams are on fire, doing what they need to do and moving on up and making an even closer race in the Eastern Conference.
And the Cavs get Darius Garland back tonight.
That's right.
So,
exciting stuff for them, dude. They just got back Evan Mobley as well, so they're getting back to full strength here.
Yeah.
Watching the play with Jonathan Kuminga, he does land on Embiid's knee, and Embiid is on the ground, by the way, and it looked, I'm not a doctor, but it very much looked like a hyperextension. That was what everybody was saying, it's a hyperextension, the way his knee kind of bent the wrong way there. His foot was planted on the ground. He's kind of in a seated position, legs out, extended, and Kuminga kind of lands on him going for a loose ball. That brought some discussion about the rules when a ball is loose, how guys just kind of pile on top of each other, and if that needs to be adjusted. But also there were questions about whether Kuminga should have been diving onto Embiid the way that he did, or if he should have known better than to do that. Do you put any blame on Jonathan Kuminga for the situation?
Not really. I mean, it may have been a little reckless, but I don't think there was any intent to hurt Joel Embiid at all. I think it was loose ball. We need a win desperately. Our season is not going well. We got to start winning these games, and I'm going to get that ball. And I think that's all there was to it. I know some people feel like it's because it's this way always, right? Anytime somebody on your own team gets hurt, you feel like the other side, it was dirty unless it's a complete non-contact thing. I don't know. I didn't see anything there that screamed dirty. Yeah, reckless for sure, but kind of get where Kuminga's coming from the standpoint of, I got to go all out because we need to win.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in Lakers circles, Solomon Hill is still vilified for what he did when LeBron was at the top of the MVP voting and then has Solomon Hill roll up on his ankle. People are still angry at Solomon Hill for that. So I know the way that goes. Yes, people, if
Zaza Pachulia,
right? For sure. Yeah, if you're a fan of that team and your guy gets injured, it is a bad play. But I think given the way the rules are in the NBA right now, and you're right, given the situation, I didn't think it was that bad. Now, I thought the play was coming to an end anyway, but that was still a close game, and I understood the urgency for the Warriors to get that win. Kuminga, I thought, had a fantastic game, by the way. He's really coming on for the Warriors. He's been doing some good things there.
Yeah, he's been really good over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so he's a guy that we talked about it yesterday, potentially the death of a dynasty, them moving some guys away. I don't think they're going to move on from him. I think they'll keep him and make him part of a big part of their future. All right, speaking of the moving players and the trade deadline, the Rockets who have had some impressive wins this season, they are looking like a buyer, another buyer on the market, putting an offer in, several picks in the deal reportedly for Mikal Bridges. Now the Nets don't want to move him, so I don't think this is going to come to fruition. I don't think it's going to turn into a done deal or anything. But worth noting that the Rockets are behaving as a buyer out there on the market, and specifically that they'd be looking for a wing like Bridges.
Yeah, really like interesting stuff there with the Bridges. It's hard to even call it really an offer because it sounds like it never fully got to that point. It sounds
Uh-huh.
like there were reports the Rockets were willing to offer a whole bunch of stuff, and the Nets shut it down before the conversation even started, which is, I want to talk about that for a minute here, but let's stay with the Rockets part of it. Do you like this idea for Houston? Like, let's really try to go all in right now?
I think it's a little bit early, but what I don't mind is Bridges is not like 32. We've talked about him being older than people realize. I believe he's 27, 28, something like that. But you look at Fred VanVleet, you look at Dylan Brooks, some of the guys they do have younger guys, Jalen Green, of course, Alperen Sengun. They've got some of those guys, but I do think that because he's more like a mid 20s guy, he'll be in his prime for another 4 or 5 years. I'm okay with it in that sense. I don't think they're ready for the big move just yet. But again, if it's a guy where you're saying, hey, let's take a step forward this year, and then we've got a core to build around going into next year, I'm fine with it. Very, very different story if they're suddenly knocking on the Bulls' door saying, hey, what can we give you for DeMar DeRozan?
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Yeah, we don't need to get crazy. If they could go get DeMar DeRozan for a very minimal price and they felt like, hey, we can sign him for a 2-year contract after this
Sure.
season, or even turn that into an extended trade kind of deal or something, I'm perfectly fine with that. I have no issue with that if that's the way they want to go. But yeah, you can't be out there offering here's 4 first-round picks for DeMar DeRozan if you're Houston. That just doesn't make sense. So I think in this position for the Rockets, I think they're in a great place to be really flexible, because I think what they've done is you've created a good enough feelings about where you're at. Like, we've stepped forward, we've moved it forward, we're in a good place. And people aren't like, we have to make the playoffs. Like, if we're not
Yeah.
in the playoffs, this was all a mess. I think most Rocket fans are like, hey, we've already been better than maybe we thought we were going to be. Like, this is really good. Like, we're competitive. We're competing for a play-in tournament spot. So this is really good stuff. So I think if you're Houston, you could be a little bit aggressive without feeling like we have to make a move. And if it's the right kind of guy, and if they feel like it's Mikal Bridges, then I'm okay with that. So let's flip it to the Nets.
Mhm.
If you're the Nets, are you like, nope, won't even listen to your offers? Like, let's not even start the conversation? Because I'm not there. I think that's crazy. Like,
Oh no, I
yeah,
think
I
you
think
have
that's
to
nuts.
listen. You
Yeah.
have to listen to these offers, and particularly because of what we talked about yesterday, when you look at how many teams have accumulated the mass of first round picks. There's not like if the Rockets come in and say, hey, 3 firsts or something or four, whatever it is, there's a lot of teams out there that might want Bridges that actually can't give you that kind of offer. They don't have that kind of draft capital to give you anymore. You've got these opportunities that are now a little bit more rare because the teams that are kind of on the bottom that are on the rebuild have accumulated so many of these picks, and they're not going to be buyers in this market. So I think you have to listen. The Nets, their season has obviously been struggling. We've heard all about Spencer Dinwiddie being on the market. We've heard about Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal, and I like Bridges a lot. I think he can be part of the future of the Nets. But if the right offer comes along, I think you got to consider it, because I will say I don't think he's a 1A guy. And until you get that guy, you're looking for that. That's what you're trying to find. And if you have to move a guy who maybe is at best a 1B guy, probably more like kind of a third guy, and that's going to give you a shot at getting that 1A guy, you got to consider it.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. You could have, by all reports that it's reporting that's out there, I think it was Shams Charania, Kelly Eco from The Athletic put the bulk of this together, was they were willing to even talk about, hey, you want some of your picks back from
Mm,
from deals that we've made. And if that's a case, then oh boy, like that now frees you up considerably, right? If you wanted to all right, we're trading Bridges. Let's move off a few more guys and bottom this thing out this year because we got our own pick back. That's on the table right now. Now you have that. Whereas otherwise, I think to some extent the smart plan is treat it as a sunk cost.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make decisions based on not having your pick, but you could and almost double benefit, right? Like we're off we go because we have our own pick. I don't think Mikal Bridges is that guy where you're like shutting everybody down before you even hear what the offers are. And that to me, that's a mistake. I don't think the Nets have that guy on the roster yet. I
Mm-hmm.
think you got to be open to just about anything. That doesn't mean Mikal Bridges goes for a top 20 protected pick and that's it. Like that's crazy. Like I think there's middle ground there where you can find something that's workable.
You know what the Nets should do is they should get their picks back from Houston and then flip those picks to Phoenix for Kevin Durant. just to go around and around and just swap out the same pieces over and over and over again.
I just like the idea of like I just want Sean Marks to be like, I want my picks back. All of them. And I want David Putney because I feel like
because I feel like it. Oh, you know, we've talked about that movie a bunch. The end result, everybody's cheering and stuff like that. I'm like, that would never happen. People would be like, we could have had Bo Callahan. Yeah. They wouldn't be like, oh, Sonny Weaver. If he thinks this, they were criticizing him going into the draft. Oh, if Sonny Weaver doesn't think that the Bo Callahan's the guy, I don't think he's the guy either. No way. They'd be calling for his head.
On the flip side, I mean, he got a running back.
He did.
3 second-round picks. So
but who's spending second round picks on running back? I mean, some of them are going at the top of the draft, but I mean, it's pretty rare right now.
10 years old. Like running backs were still important then. So yeah, nowadays you wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs both went first round this year. But anyway, we could go down a whole rabbit hole about whether or not he actually made a good deal at the end. 3 second round picks to get a running back, and then get to pay Vontae Mack first round salary when you could have got him at 7. But regardless, we can break down Sonny Weaver's moves whenever we want.
Vontae Mack, no matter what.
That's right. No matter what. All right, let's jump over to, let's go here. Speaking of draft day, the 2-night draft is now official. NBA draft will be split into 2 days, round 1 one day, round 2 the second day. What do you think the overall effect of this is going to be, besides just fans have to spend 2 days watching the draft now? What do you think this will change anything as far as the trade front or moves or anything like that?
I think there's a chance it will make the second night even more interesting, where you may see second night is more often involved around buying a pick, or we're trading 2 picks for 1 pick kind of thing, or we're going to trade you our 45th pick with next year's second rounder for your 30th pick this year, and those kind of things. You may see almost a reset of, all right, this guy went off the board from a draftee, or this player was traded. It may be just that pause and everybody gets a chance to reset, turns it into, okay, now we've got some other stuff moving. So just so everybody knows what's going to happen this year, it is going to be on June 26th, which is Wednesday. That'll be the first round. The second round will be on June 27th. The first round is going to be at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. The second round will take place at ESPN Studios. So I don't really know what that means. I don't know if everybody picks up and moves all the draft people or how that's going to work. I'm not really sure. ABC, ESPN will have coverage of the first round, and ESPN will have coverage of second round. Both nights start at 8:00. Here's the big change: is first round continue to be 5 minutes per pick. Second round, which has been for years, has been 2 minutes per pick. It's going to go up to 4 minutes per pick, and that's how they're going to lengthen out or otherwise the second round would be over in like an hour and a half ish by the time you started with the pre-draft stuff and things like that.
So, and heaven forbid you not have as much time to cram in commercials, right?
Yeah, right. So that's also definitely a factor here. I'll also say this. I hope, especially on the second round, like we got to get like Jonathan Givony and Jeremy Woo, ESPN's 2 draft guys. They have to be on there. Maybe even a college basketball guy or 2. I know Jay Billis is kind of on there, but we need people who actually know these kids. No offense to any of the other ESPN talent, But if they're just going to be up there screaming and like, I don't know anything about these guys, and you need to go big man, and whatever it is, we don't need that. Like it's not gonna be good for anybody. So let's get people who actually know these guys to really break it down. I think it's kind of fun because rather than, all right, we had a trade and we have 3 minutes, 5 minutes to break down the trade, we could come back to it the next night. I think that part is kind of neat too. So I'm open minded about it. I kind of like the one night draft, but I'm open minded. That'll be a good change.
I think it definitely can be a good change. I think it can allow for a little bit more creativity in the second round when we see deals and things of that nature. One thing, though, is, when you said that date, and I'd seen it before, but it didn't really sink in, like June 26th, that's a late draft. I double checked. Last year's draft was June 22nd. I thought it was usually early, June 20th, 21st, 22nd, like right in
It was a
there.
little later.
It is a little bit later, and I wonder what kind of impact that's going to have too. The 26th and the 27th is the draft. We know free agency officially starts, July 1st technically, but
The
June
30th,
June
yeah.
30th, really, right? I mean, we tend to think of July 1st as the start, but June 30th it'll kick off. So now it's a shortened window between the end of the draft and start of free agency. I do wonder if that will make teams feel a little bit more of a crunch, because like the second the draft ends, you really got to pivot and focus on free agency, which, I mean, really, you're going to have to focus on it even before the draft and be working on these things. Not that I would ever suggest that anything is done in free agency ahead of the actual buzzer. That is not a thing. Nobody would ever do that.
Sure, yeah.
No, that does not happen. But that'll be another interesting dynamic to see. Do teams wind up feeling like they're scrambling by the end of the draft as they kind of pivot towards free agency? And does, what happens on draft night obviously is going to affect what some of their goals are during the free agency period.
Yeah, and it's always a little bit of a weird spot by the time you get to the NBA finals, because you have two teams that are all in on doing everything they can to win a championship. Then you have the front office focus is very split, because these are the real dates for this year. We could have June 23rd could be game 7. That is when game 7 is scheduled, if there is one, for the NBA finals.
Wow.
3 days later, the first round of the draft, then the second round the next day, then 2 days, and then the opening of free agency on the 30th. So super compact, tight timeline. It's not totally unique. There's generally, if the finals goes late, it's more like 5 days in between, I think. The other thing too that the NBA is working around a little bit as far as player availability for stuff, there are Olympic qualifying tournaments that are going to be happening in June and July, that are going to be guys they're not going to necessarily be available for that. I think they're actually at the very tail end of June and in the beginning part of July. I'd have to look those dates up. But those are how they're going to fill the last few spots in the 2024 Olympic Games. So everything's working on a very kind of compressed timeline, and that's where a lot of this stuff is factoring in.
Keith, the June 23rd, you're saying could be game 7 of the NBA final. So you could win, in theory, you could have players who win an NBA championship, and then your victory parade, probably the earliest would be maybe Tuesday, the 25th.
Yeah.
So, and then free agency starts the 30th. That's the next Sunday.
Yep.
So before you could have your victory parade, and before you've even gone a week, you could be off the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the tight windows in the NBA that they work under, and a big part of a lot of this stuff has been get this stuff done so we can get people in there for the for summer league and the like and all that. Right? They want to have guys available in summer league and everything. I'm looking it up. So the Nuggets, the game, it only went 5 games, so it ended on the 12th, the finals last year. But yeah, I mean, only 2.5 weeks later, Bruce Brown was gone and off to the Pacers. So yeah,
crazy
tight windows. But 2-night draft, I'm going to be open minded. I'm going to go in with a positive attitude that I think it'll be really good. We'll probably plan to do something live for the first round. I think the second round we'll retweet to watching it ourselves. And
we'll be on standby in the event that some big
yeah,
trade happens.
exactly.
But
If
yes.
something crazy happens, well, I know I'll be sitting in front of the computer and the TV. So if something crazy happens, we'll turn the mic on and get into it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. The next big thing, a week from tomorrow, trade deadline day.
That's
We'll
right.
be live trade deadline day. We'll get you that time soon. I know people have been asking, what time are you guys going live? We generally do right around 1 o'clock ish or so Eastern, a couple hours ahead of the trade deadline, and then we'll go probably 3-4 hours. Kind of depends on what kind of what the deadline brings us. If it's busy all the way up through 3 o'clock, and it's like, hey, there's still details trickling out about deals, we'll stay and keep breaking them down. But we will be live for at least a couple hours, probably 3 or 4 hours on trade deadline day. Will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's going to be a blast. Trade deadline day is usually a good time. We'll see. Hopefully, it is this year too. We get a lot of moves. All right, let's get into. Oh well, I guess you know what. Let's go back to Houston a little bit here. The Knicks reportedly covet Tari Eason. And what if the Rockets are acting as a buyer? Do you think they would turn around and trade away Eason? I mean, I guess it depends on what they're getting back in return here.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we got a report, I think it was at the end of last week, that the Rockets are interested in Quentin Grimes.
Right.
So let's go.
Are they
Right?
just negotiating through the media right here? Is that
Right?
what what this is?
It'd be kind of funny if it was. I guess it's kind of eye of the beholder. Like, who do you like more? I
Yeah.
think I like Tari Eason slightly more than I do Quentin Grimes. I think Tari Eason's just, I know for certain Tari Eason's the kind of guy who can play 15 to 20 minutes a night minimum off the bench on any good team. Just the energy he plays with. Part of what maybe the Knicks are looking at is, hey, you got Cam Whitmore is playing pretty well. You already have Jabari Smith Jr. You still got a guy like Jashawn Tate. Like, where are you trying to go with all this? What are we doing with Eason, who's been out with an injury? So, and the Knicks could use another backup forward to have in rotation. So, I don't hate the idea for New York at all. I just kind of wonder, where is that going, and what would Houston's actual asking price be for Tari Eason?
Yeah, and that's going to be something that will, I mean, ultimately determine whether or not a deal gets done. From what I've heard, it sounds like asking prices around the league are still pretty high, but that's also not that uncommon. You're going to see movement towards the middle on both fronts, both the buyer and seller side of things, once we get even closer to that trade deadline, which once again is a week from tomorrow.
Yep. Yeah, we're getting there, and those are the kind of moves that tend to come up here. As we get closer, is more of these role player moves. Woj in his Wednesdays with Woj, or whatever the heck they're calling it, over on Threads, he said he expects several role player trades to be done. He said I'm very much paraphrasing, but it was something along the lines of, I don't know if there's going to be any blockbusters, but I think there's going to be a lot of role player movement in the next week. But really,
which is stuff that we like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is not, because a couple people are like, nothing's happening. Well, again, I'll remind you, we already had some big trades that went down. The other part that I would remind everybody of is it's generally pretty quiet until about till about Monday of next week. That's when it generally starts to pick back up again.
Well, and we'll see. Hopefully it does. We'll be waiting patiently for Monday. And that's when the NBA is going to surprise us with like a boom Friday trade, something like that.
Wouldn't that be great? It's going to be Saturday when I'm at the soccer field.
Oh, that's when it'll be. Yep. They're going to wait. Go, where's Keith at right now? Okay. Drop the Woj bomb. All right, let's jump over here. We got a couple of topics left. Malcolm Brogdon, who is very much on the trade market, a player that a lot of people have talked about in a lot of different rumors, is happy in Portland. I would be surprised if the trade deadline comes and goes and he stays in Portland, but he says he's happy there doing what he's doing, even though they're not winning a lot of games. He's happy being a starter there, being the floor general there, and doing what he's doing, and that he feels valued there, which, he said also that he maybe didn't feel quite so valued in Boston. I don't know how much of that is because they were working to trade him and all that kind of stuff, but it seems like Brogdon is certainly not trying to push his way out of Portland, even if he is a guy that's in high demand on the trade market.
Yeah, I think the Brogdon not feeling valued stuff, I wonder at what point did that start that he didn't feel valued? Because if it was after last season, I don't necessarily blame him. They basically had him all but traded to the Clippers before the Clippers blew up the original construction of the Kristaps Porzingis trade. Then they very clearly shopped him for the next several weeks, months to then before sending him out and sending him off to the Portland Trailblazers. And that came because Drew Holiday landed there as part of the Damian Lillard trade. Brogdon has been a guy. He's always been a little unhappy. There was a lot of stuff about he wasn't super thrilled at the end of his time in Milwaukee. There was stuff about how he wasn't always happy in Indiana. He was very open last year with the Celtics and said it on the record, which I give him a lot of credit for. He's like, yeah, I don't want to come off the bench. I'd rather start. Like, I've always been a starter, and that's okay. But he very much said, hey, we're trying to win a title, so this is where they need me. I'm going to play off the bench. So it's kind of, I guess that's a long way of saying it's kind of in one ear, out the other a little bit on this, because I don't know what to make of all of this. And, and him saying, like, I'm playing for a championship coach and Chauncey Billups. Well, yeah, I mean, Chauncey Billups won a title as a player. He hasn't won anything as a coach. So let's settle down with all that rhetoric. But yeah, my guess is Malcolm Brogdon gets traded to the Knicks or any number of other teams in the next 2 weeks. He's probably going to be very happy to be there too. So, I don't know what to make of all of this.
I think that when a guy comes out and says, like, hey, I'm happy in Portland, and think in the midst of all of these trade rumors, I think the message is not so much I'm happy here, I really don't want to go anywhere, I would not welcome a trade anywhere. It's just him trying to make sure everybody knows, look, I'm not pushing my way out. I'm not being that guy that's saying get me out of here or anything like that. I'm going to play wherever I'm going to play, and that's that. I think, and that's not a bad thing to put out there publicly, especially in today's day and age where you've got, we're in the era of trade demands. I think it's kind of the anti trade demand here, right? Like, he's going out there and saying, look, I will do whatever. I'm happy here. I'll be happy somewhere else. This isn't him saying, please don't trade me. It's also not him saying, I want to be on a team that's contending for a championship. At least that's not what he's saying publicly.
Yeah, agreed. I'm with you on that. I think he's just saying, hey, I'm not going to raise a big stink if I don't get traded here. But it's Portland's going to do what they need to do anyway, whether it's, they're not going to let up much about how Malcolm Brogdon feels one way or another change things for them. If they find the right deal for him, they're going to move him. And that's just how it is. They're committed to rebuilding around the younger guys. They have Brogdon for now. He's playing a big role. Maybe he continues to do that for the remainder of this season and it's summertime thing. But I don't know that this goes past the summertime with him on this roster. It just doesn't really make sense.
Agreed. All right, let's jump over to the Bulls, who there's a few rumors out there now that this is, I'm trying to remember who had this, but that the Bulls are unlikely to make a big move here at the trade deadline, which isn't a surprise, and they're not the only ones. There were a few other teams that kind of put out through their various sources and stuff that hey, we're probably not going to do something big. This is also the time of year to kind of put that out there, like, yeah, nothing's really impressing us that much. We probably won't do anything. In other words, like, you better up your offers.
If your offers stink.
Yeah, exactly. But they do lose Patrick Williams for 2 weeks, so he'll be out obviously through the trade deadline. Not that I was expecting him to get moved, but nothing long term here. But I don't think this shifts too much of what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything. The Bulls have done well to lift themselves out of being in the range of like 12th in the East up to they're ninth. They're ahead of the Hawks by a game and a half. They're only a couple game, two and a half games behind the Heat and the Magic. So this is just, they didn't need this, I guess is the best way to put this. That's a position where they don't have a lot. I will say Julian Phillips, second round player they drafted a year ago. He's been getting a lot of run and he looks pretty good for the Bulls in these last handful of games that he's been playing. So this is kind of, again, give you lemons, make lemonade out of it, right? Where Patrick Williams is out, so we're going to give some extra minutes to Julian Phillips, and we'll see what it looks like. I still think most of the Bulls story is going to be written in the next week when we find out what happens with Zach LaVine. Does that trigger then, all right, maybe we should move DeMar DeRozan. Maybe we should move Alex Caruso. What do they get back in a trade for LaVine, if they move him at all? Where does this all look like? Because otherwise, I think it's just going to leave a lot more questions that are going to linger into the summertime and all that stuff. And it's going to be, all right, did we just kind of roll all this over, except now a couple guys are free agents and can move on? What is that going to look like? But from the Patrick Williams standpoint, this has been a rough year for him. He was pretty good last year. I thought he had a really nice year for the Bulls. And now he's been in and out of the starting lineup. His minutes have been all over the place. It's just been a weird year. Now he's got this bone bruising, I guess it is, in his foot or whatever it is, and he's gonna miss a couple weeks, and that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's not ideal for a 22-year-old here that seemed to be on the
In a
rise.
contract year too.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
That's not good. He's at on the season, he's at 10 points, which is just a little bit below his career high, which was the season before. Almost 4 rebounds, 1.5 assists. I mean, he's kind of stalled out, right? He's basically doing the same thing that he did last
I
season,
think a
just
lot of
slight,
that's minutes and roll.
yeah,
Because his minutes are down. Yeah.
just a little bit slightly less efficient than he was last year. But you would have liked to have seen in year 4 like a significant step forward, and we just kind of haven't seen that.
Yep. Yeah. So he could be a really good second draft guy for a team where it's, hey, let's try to snag him. Maybe even in the next week here, try to get him, and then you get his restricted rights, and you can control the process for yourself if you really think he's somebody. Especially if you're a team that is, well, let's just say a little weak on like big wings. Maybe you're thinking, yeah, we could grab Patrick Williams and bring him in and try to get him healthy first of all, and then give him 30 minutes a night and see what it looks like, and then we can make our own decision in restricted free agency. I wouldn't mind seeing them get a fresh start.
Keith, before we go here, a little unscheduled nonsense, I suppose. I'm assuming you saw LeBron's hourglass tweet.
I did.
Isn't this a great time of year?
Yeah.
Like you could I want somebody else now to tweet out like an alarm clock or something like that, just something random, like or a stop sign, or I don't know, just throw out some you could mean anything and tweet out any object and people will run with it and take it to mean whatever you want. And I would, if I was a player, I would be having so much fun with that right now.
So I'm going to do three quick things. First is, when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's cryptic emoji season. Let's
That's
go.
Right.
And then I like to think he was just catching up on old episodes of the Front Office Show, and he was a big fan of the Sands Through the Hourglass.
Games of Our Lives.
Right?
Yep.
Maybe that's what it was. I'll tell the story. I've told it on the show before, but I'll tell it again. I was in the visiting locker room in Orlando. This was several years ago. No, I won't say who the team was or who the player was, but the player was in trade rumors, and the player in the locker room said, hey, guys, watch this. All he tweeted out was the eye emojis, the one where it's like the two big eyes together. And they sat there and laughed and cackled like school children for like 20 minutes about how funny the reactions were. That were like, people were like, oh, you got traded, where are you going? And and then all this speculation that came along with it. And I will say this, guy never got traded. Like never ended up getting traded. That trade deadline.
Tell me it was John Collins.
It wasn't. That'd be funny if it was, but it wasn't. But yeah, it just, that's the stuff that happens right this time of year is, and the players they know how much we're all glued to this stuff and everything. So, hey, at least we're not talking about an LOL tweet, right?
And then, did you see his excuse?
Yeah,
after the game, if you've gone on the Twitter or X app at all, like the quote tweet or whatever, the quote button and the post button, they're nowhere near each other. It's a very different process to do the two things. I'm like, sure, you meant to quote tweet something.
He meant to quote tweet it from Eric Bledsoe's hair salon. That's all.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know. Somebody
I don't
out there
be here anymore.
Somebody said, "Well, were you trying to quote the Lakers lineup announcement? Right? Was that what you were?"
That's what I almost wondered. Like, was that the mistake you made? Yeah. Speaking of Lakers Celtics tomorrow night.
That's right.
Celtics just released their injury report. The only one on there is Luke Cornett. So Boston is as healthy as they've been this year.
That is par for the course. If you are playing the Lakers, that will heal you up faster than Wolverine's healing factor. That gets everybody healthy, including DeJounte Murray, who was great the other night.
We'll see about AD, right? That's the big one floating out there for the Lakers. Will he be ready to go or not?
Right. Yeah, he's been dealing with hip spasms. The Christian Wood thing, for people who don't know what the heck we're talking about, Christian Wood tweeted out LOL like right after the Lakers put out their lineup, which featured Jackson Hayes starting over him in the starting five, despite Anthony Davis being out. And so a lot of people took that to mean he was not happy with that situation.
Being semi-serious about this, coaches are reluctant when a guy has found a good rhythm coming off the bench to just plug them in the starting five. And Wood's been playing better off the bench, I think, in recent weeks than he had for a while. And I think that's all it was. I think it was, all right, I'm not gonna screw up that rhythm. And knowing Jackson Hayes was probably, I don't know how many minutes total he ended up playing, but it was probably going to be, he's only going to play about the first 5 minutes of each half. And then it's you and small ball lineups, and we'll cobble it all together and figure it out from there. So I totally get it. Like, this is not an uncommon thing, but I don't I'm let's just say I'm not necessarily buying what our buddy Chris Wood's selling there.
Yeah, Jackson Hayes wound up playing like 24 minutes or something like that, but that's because it was a blowout, and, you know, and all that.
Yeah, a game got away from him. Yeah,
it did big time. Anyway, all right, so I can't wait to see what emojis we get to talk about tomorrow. You remember that, like, the all the emojis when DeAndre Jordan was getting barricaded in his home.
Screenshots of emojis because Paul Pierce didn't know how to tweet emojis. Screenshots of, what was it, the rocket ship in the car or whatever it was, in the airplane. Yeah.
Oh my.
That was that of all-time stupid nights in the NBA. That and the Witch Brooks night are two of my favorite
Dylan Brooks or Marshawn Brooks.
Yeah. That was so good. And then Game of Zones like made fun of the Brooks thing.
Yeah.
Like a little while later. So yeah, those were two of my all-time silly nights in the NBA. Whereas, you know, they've barricaded DeAndre Jordan in his house, and then the Witch Brooks, like the Witch Brooks thing, that's just so good.
That was so bizarre. Good. That was pretty funny. Mark Cuban driving around looking for DeAndre Jordan. Mark is out. He's out driving around the town trying to find him. There were some funny things happening. I can only imagine what we're going to get this year.
It's the dumbest, most wonderful league in the entire world. I love it.
It really
so
is. It really is.
Somebody asked me the other day, they're like, there's a lot of NBA guys who watch wrestling. Like, you don't watch wrestling? And I was like, I get all the soap opera drama I need from the NBA. Like, I don't need to watch it. I have no problem. Anybody who likes wrestling, like, fine. I loved it, you know, when I was younger, and then loved it again when I was in college. We went through a whole phase where that's all we did was
Stone Cold.
You know, Stone Cold, DX, The Rock, like all of them. But yeah, I just, now it's my dramas quota is filled nightly by the NBA. I'm good.
Yeah, we get plenty with the NBA, that's for sure. All right, everybody, we'll wrap things up there. Do appreciate you. Make sure that you follow us over on the podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And then, of course, on the YouTube channel, subscribe. And don't forget to turn on those notifications. Keep you up to date on everything leading up to the trade deadline. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.